The first part in repairing an asphalt shingle is getting the damaged shingle out safely without damaging the shingles that we plan on, that are going to remain on the home. We have to lift up the remaining shingles to be able to pull out the fasteners on the damaged shingle, and all the while try to, not further damage the shingles that are going to remain. So getting the damaged shingles out correctly, safely, without damaging anything else is going to be your number one priority. Once you've accomplished that, that's usually the trickiest part, especially depending on the age of the shingle. If they're crumbling or what kind of condition it's in, that can be tricky. If they're sealed down really well, kind of breaking that seal and getting those out. Once you've gotten that shingle out, of course, would be replacing the new shingles, and then again you have to get the remaining shingles, the ones that are going to remain on the roof. You have to get those up and be able to fasten down the new shingles that you just added without damaging them. You don't want to flip them up too high and crack them. You don't want to break the seals on them. You want to try to keep those in the best condition as possible. Once all those shingles are replaced, then we always go back in with some new sealant, reseal all the old ones to the new ones. Once that seal's been broken, they're not ever going to reseal the old ones. That sealant's gone on them, so we'll add some new sealant to them and just make sure we do a really good job repairing them and try to keep the integrity of the remaining existing shingles on there. So whether you decide to go with a repair or a complete roof replacement is going to have a handful of deciding factors. Number one is going to be the overall age and condition of the roof. If your roof is only 5 years old, now you might want to replace 20% of the shingles, and you can kind of justify doing a repair. Maybe you have to redo a valley, and you're going to have to tie back into those existing shingles, and we can make that work. But if your roof's already 20 years old and you have to repair, an entire valley or 20% of that roof, and you're going to tie into those 20-year-old shingles, not only is that repair going to stick out like a sore thumb, having brand new shingles to the 20-year-old shingles, the old shingles aren't going to seal well. A lot of them are going to crack and break as you're trying to pull them off. So that repair kind of gets larger and larger just by chance. That's just kind of how that works. So eventually, you kind of get to that point where, that the age, it's just not worth doing a repair. You're going to have just as much time and labor trying to protect and keep the existing shingles as you would just ripping them off and just replacing at least maybe one whole facet, versus just doing a repair. We ensure our repairs perform long term by adding several steps. We always add extra sealant on the old asphalt shingles to make sure they reseal to the new shingles. A lot of guys won't do that. Once they break that seal loose and they nail them back down, they're going to assume that the sun and the weather is going to just seal the two back together. Once that sealant's been broken, there's really not a whole lot of tar on the backside of that old shingle that's kind of been worn off. So we'll add an extra layer of sealant to make sure they seal down properly. Sometimes we'll have to add in extra fasteners depending on where it is. So we'll just really taking our time, being extra cautious, pulling those shingles out, even if it's in an open area, out in the field. If we remove enough shingles, we'll always replace that underlayment, and we usually do it with a piece of ice and water, even if that's not necessary, just because it's a little bit of an extra precaution. Just to have a good sticky piece of ice and water, stuck to that underlayment, to that decking, for those shingles to really stick to, and to make sure that repair, performs and lasts, so the longevity. For full roof replacements, we just go above and beyond, and we do everything by spec, and we make sure, we always do a manufacturer's warranty, and we just make sure we just do a really thorough job with the installation. We always have our supervisor there on site, and that's all they do, is just make sure everything is done properly, that the nail fastening patterns are done correctly, that just everything is done correctly, just to ensure the quality is there for the homeowner, and that way the longevity of that roof is at its maximum.